Hi friends, it's Aubrey. I hope you're having a great Sunday. Our family is on a little trip to visit our family while you're watching this today. And in preparation for us going on the trip, we did a pantry clean out where we just didn't go to the store and used what we had on hand to feed our family in preparation for that trip. So if you'd like to see what pantry clean out meals we did this week, keep watching. We have some chicken that was from some meal box kits that we didn't end up using. So we're going to use that and some pantry ingredients. Put things into our crock pot to make some Hawaiian haystacks. First, we're going to add 3/4 cup of chicken broth or water. I'm using water in a broth-based powder. To the crock pot, you'll next add a can of cream of chicken soup. You can definitely make this from scratch at home. I didn't have all the ingredients on hand, so I opted to go for the easier canned version. It does taste super good if you use homemade, so definitely try that out if you haven't before. And then I'll go ahead and season this with some salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and I also added in a half of a yellow onion. I would go light on the salt since the canned soup is pretty salty. You can always add additional salt once everything is cooked. After the sauce mixture is all combined, you'll go ahead and add in about 1.5 pounds of chicken. You can use thighs or breasts, it works well either way. And you'll put that in the crock pot, put the lid on, and turn it on low for 4 to 6 hours or high for 2 to 4. Kind of depends on the temperature of your crock pot. Mine runs pretty high, so when I did it on high, I cooked it for about an hour and a half and then turned it down to low for the remaining hour. And then when it's all done cooking, you can shred it up and then serve it with some rice, and then you can top it with any types of toppings that you like. We really like pineapple, tomatoes, and peanuts. Let me know if you end up trying this one out. It is Tuesday. We are going to have a meal from the freezer because it's been a long day, had some dental work done, and I'm not feeling the best. So let me show you what we're making. This is one of my go-to meals. We pretty much always have some sort of buns, some corn, and some sort of like barbecue meat. This is some pulled pork that we made for a Super Bowl party that was in the freezer, so we're just having that thaw out in some warm water. We're going to toast these buns probably in the air fryer with a little bit of butter. Put this in the microwave with some water and butter, salt and pepper. Combine it all together and we'll have a nice little slider and some corn on the side. Super easy dinner, should come together in about 5 or 10 minutes. These pretzel buns, I don't know. They were not my favorite. They kind of tasted burnt, and then toasting them just made it worse. So I wouldn't recommend these, but it ended up being just fine. We were all full and had enough to eat, and it ended up tasting all right. Definitely would have preferred the sweet Hawaiian rolls or different type of bun though. I'm just glad that we were able to have dinner that night and that we didn't end up wasting any food, and we got to clean some things out of the freezer as well. It's Wednesday. We're gonna make spaghetti sauce and then spaghetti for dinner tonight. I will show you how we do that. I'm using my favorite homemade spaghetti sauce recipe from Taste Better from Scratch. It's in my recipe binder. This is where I house all of the recipes that we like, so that way we can just pull them out easily. I'll go ahead and have this one linked down below. It is super good, so we're just gonna do everything that it says here on the recipe except for the crushed red pepper flakes because we are not, well, I am not a big spice person, so let's get this all cooking. I have about half of a yellow onion with some oil in my pot. I'm heating that up while the water is boiling, and we're just gonna let this saute for a few minutes before we add in the rest of the ingredients. We first added in one 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. Got my spices added in here. I'll go ahead and list them on the screen. We're gonna stir this in, and then we will go ahead and add the next ingredients. Next, I added in one 6-ounce can of tomato paste, and then I added in about a cup of water and stirred this around until all of the tomato paste was not dissolved, but well incorporated into the sauce. I then added a half tablespoon of sugar to cut down on the acidity from the canned tomatoes, and then I also added in about a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. I got my rotini pasta cooking and used my handy dandy dinosaur ladle, and once the noodles were well cooked and to the texture that we like them, I added them into our sauce and stirred that around, made sure to cover all of the noodles, and I also had some ground beef that was pre-cooked in the freezer, so I warmed that up and put it in with the sauce. We also had some breadsticks, and this was a hit, especially with my almost 2-year-old. It's Thursday. We are gonna have a quinoa bowl tonight to use up some of the onions and carrots that we have on hand. And if you've seen my channel anytime recently, you know I've been making these a lot, but they are delicious, so let's get cooking. First, I chopped up my carrots into smaller chunks, and then I did the same thing with the onions. And then I rinsed and drained my chickpeas, and I put everything into a nice big bowl and gave it a good drizzle of olive oil. I made sure to stir everything together to make sure it was all covered by the olive oil, and then I added in my seasonings. I had a little bit of a packet of seasoning from a meal box kit left that I wanted to use up, and then I seasoned it with some additional salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. Made sure to give this one other big stir so that all of the pieces were covered. One of the reasons why we make these quinoa and veggie bowls so often is one, because we normally have the ingredients on hand, and two, because they taste amazing. But three, it's a really good clean out the veggie crisp drawer, or like your pantry if you have sweet potatoes or yams. You can really throw whatever vegetables into this and it will taste great. We've done sweet potatoes before, we've done peppers, we've done carrots. You could do green beans. Honestly, whatever vegetable you like roasted, go ahead and throw that in here. We're going to give everything one more big stir before we put it onto our sprayed cookie sheet. You can definitely use parchment paper, aluminum foil if you want to for an easier cleanup. I decided to just put it on the pan today, and I just made sure everything was in an even flat layer, and then we popped it into the oven. And the oven was preheated to 450 degrees, and we bake it for around 20 to 25 minutes, but we do go ahead and stir or move the vegetables and chickpeas around halfway through just to make sure everything's cooking evenly. While the veggies and chickpeas are cooking in the oven, I like to make our sauce. Sometimes I'll do it with guacamole and sour cream and lime. That's probably the best sauce that we make for this. Unfortunately, the guacamole I was going to use was not good anymore, so we had to throw that away. So we just did a lime and sour cream sauce with some salt and pepper. I honestly just kind of eyeball it until the consistency and taste are right, which if you're doing just a normal singular batch, it's normally about 3 tablespoons of sour cream to like a teaspoon of the lime juice. I was making quite larger batch because we like it extra saucy. So it was a lot more than that. But like I said, I really just eyeball it and make sure that it tastes right and the consistency is nice and smooth. We top ours with some feta cheese, and we also had some tomatoes in the fridge that needed to get used. So we popped those in there as well, and it was absolutely delicious. If you haven't tried this one out yet, definitely recommend it. For Friday's dinner, we had our favorite potato soup. We make it in our Instant Pot. You'll need about 2 stalks of celery. Mine were in the freezer frozen because we don't go through celery as quickly as the bunch would go bag. And then we used about a cup of chopped carrots and then 4 or 5 medium-sized golden potatoes. You can use russet potatoes or you can use red potatoes, really whatever potatoes you guys prefer. It will work out just fine. So we put that all into the Instant Pot. I had some ham in my freezer from Christmas that needed to get used, so we added that in here. You can leave the meat out or you can add sausage or bacon, whatever you guys prefer. I'll then add 3 cups of chicken broth. I use the broth-based powder and just water for that, but you can use actual chicken broth too. And then we just season it with some salt and pepper until it looks right, and then we always add a little bit extra at the table. And then you'll add about a teaspoon of thyme and a tablespoon of parsley. I also add about a teaspoon of onion powder and then 3 cloves of garlic. I'll give this a nice stir to make sure that all the potatoes are at least covered by some of the water or broth base, and then we'll put the Instant Pot lid on and cook this on manual pressure for 3 minutes. You can let this naturally release for 5 to 10 minutes, or if you're impatient like I am, you can go ahead and do a quick release. I normally cover my Instant Pot with a cloth so the water doesn't go everywhere. And then you'll add in a cup of milk or cream. I prefer cream, but we only had whole milk, so we didn't want to go to the store for anything else. And so we mix that with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and a little bit of the soup so that way it activates that thickening process. And then you'll slowly dump that into the soup. And if you're someone who has like a dairy allergy, you can definitely leave out the cream or the milk and it'll taste great. And so you can do it either way. The soup is so delicious. You definitely need to try this one out with your family. It's Saturday. We are gonna make a pork and potato sausage casserole. This is one of our favorites and I don't make it that often because it's kind of labor intensive, but we have all the ingredients on hand already, so let's get this cooking. To start, we're gonna cook up this ground pork that we had from a meal box kit that we didn't get to, and then some onion as well, and then we'll go ahead and dice these up into pretty thin, not paper thin, but pretty thin slices. And then we'll make a roux with some cheese, milk, flour, and some of the starchy potato water. And it will bake in the oven with some additional cheese for, I think it's about 30 minutes. Let's get this going. I got all of my potatoes thinly sliced. I really should invest in a mandolin or some sort of veggie chopper. It would have made this process a lot easier. I do have a nice food processor, but it has a lot of parts and I didn't want to wash all of them. So anyways, here's how thin they are. We're going to boil them in some water for about 5 to 7 minutes. And then while that's going, we're going to start cooking our ground pork. And we're just going to season this with some salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder. And we'll also throw in a diced onion. You can have bigger chunks or smaller chunks. It's totally up to you and what you guys prefer. That was probably one of the worst onions I've ever done. My eyes are literally watering so bad. You'll put the boiled potatoes in a greased 9x13 pan, and then you'll top this with the meat and onion mixture. We'll go ahead and set that aside, and then we're going to make the roux or the white sauce that's going to go on top of everything. In my pan, I have 3 tablespoons of butter melted, and then I'm adding a 1/4 cup of flour. I'm going to stir this until it gets nice and golden brown. And once it's at that coloring, I'm going to add in 1 cup of the reserved potato water and 1 cup of whole milk. I combined the warm potato water with the milk before putting it in the pot so that way the milk didn't scald, and I added in the milk and potato water slowly just to make sure nothing burned or splashed or made a big mess. I liberally seasoned this with salt and pepper, and then I also added in about a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. I added in about a 1/2 cup of shredded cheddar cheese and stirred that until it was all the way melted and combined. And then I took my sauce and topped that over the pork and potato mixture. And I gave everything a good stir to make sure that everything was covered with the delicious sauce. And then I topped the rest of this with cheese and about another 1/2 cup. And then I covered it and put it into my preheated 375-degree oven for about 30 minutes. And once that 30 minutes was done, I uncovered it and cooked it for another 5 to 10 minutes until the cheese was nice and bubbly and crisp on top. This was amazing. You have to go make this. For Sunday's dinner, we did pot roast and mashed potatoes. We are meal sharing a little bit with my parents. We had the roast in our freezer, but we were out of potatoes and they have plenty of potatoes, so they're going to handle the sides. We're going to handle the meat and the gravy. So let's get this cooking. I chopped up an onion, trimmed the fat off of my meat, and then went ahead and seasoned this with some garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. I got some oil heated up in my Instant Pot, and then we went ahead and put the roast face down with the seasonings and let that cook for about 5 minutes, and we did that on every single side. We made sure to season the sides as we went along, and we were looking for a nice golden brown crust just to make sure that all those flavors and juices were going to be locked in. And then we went ahead and added 2 cups of beef broth. We actually kind of doubled it, so it's 2 cups of liquid, but then 4 of the little tabs that make a cup each of the beef broth, just because we didn't have any onion soup mix. So we want to really amp up that beef and onion flavor. So that's what we did here. And then when that was all ready to go, we put the lid on and cooked this on manual pressure for 52 minutes. I let this naturally release for about 5 minutes before I put a cloth over the top to let the rest of the steam out of the Instant Pot. Once it was safe to open it, I took it out and put it into a baking dish to transport it over to my parents' house. And we had some potatoes and salad and carrots along the side of this, and it was very tasty. We love doing roast, especially on Sundays with the family. Here is what my plate looked like. Everyone loved it, and it was so good. That is all I have for you guys today. If you did enjoy, give this video a like and hit that subscribe button because I make a lot of pantry clean out challenges here on my channel, and I'll go ahead and link some down below for you if you're wanting some more of this kind of content. And if you did like this video and you have other pantry clean out ideas for me, go ahead and leave those down below in the comments. I'd love to see what you're making for your family, and I hope you have the best rest of your day. Bye!